We're picking up a of an aleph on the top by the two dots. This Gemara right before the Mishnah is going back on the previous Mishnah. We said we had two brothers, two men actually, rather, not two brothers, two men, and they married each one of two sisters, and it's unclear to which one is each one married, and they died no children, so there's a chiur yibum, and each one has two brothers. So what do we say? Each side, one of the brothers is chalitza to one woman, and then the second brother could go ahead and yibum. And we explained yesterday how we got out of achos chalitzoso, achos zukukoso, and yavam l'shuk by doing those chalitzos. Then the Mishnah said, what happens if one side, before they asked the shiur, right? They both brothers jumped up into chalitza, so they're out, and on the other side now, we applied what we said earlier in the Mishnah, so then the first brother should go with chalitza, the second one to yibum. And then we said, kodmu v'konsu, if they both went and did yibum, ein motzim miyad. Says the Gemara, it's really a pellet. Tani shila, v'afilu shniyam kohanim. It says, even if they're all kohanim, right, these two brothers they're both kohanim, still, once they got married, we're not motzi them. Now, to bring out the chiddush here, the Gemara says, "My time machlutza derabbanan, v'savi chalutza lo gazer b'rabbanan." Meaning, one of these women, whichever one it is, one of them for sure received chalitza from the proper brother. Right from the other side, one of these women was married to that other side, the other family's, the man who died in the other family, and chalitza was done to her. And whoever's doing, getting married to her, and he's a kohen, is getting married to a chalitza. But l'maisa, each brother could say, the woman that I'm married to is a safek-sister. We know there's a vade chalutza here. We just don't know which one it is. Each one can say I'm safek-sister. Lo gozer barabana. They weren't gozer in that case. Says the Gemara, chalutza derabbanan ivatanya grusha ina grusha chalutza benanya. Tamlomer v'isha. So there's extra v'isha grusha. V'isha is marbe, either the isha or the vav. V'isha is marbe the chalutza. So it's a pasuk. Gemara says, so how can you be mekel? Must be the rabbanon who karas machmal. Fine. The Gemara says this here in Austin Kedushin, and there's a whole discussion. I read the Rashi, Yamakos, Mashma, it is the Oraysa. Tosfos doesn't like Rashi there, and then believe so I want to make machlokes about it. Fine. This is the Gemara here. It's the rabbanon. Remember this Mishnah for when you get to that Rashi. Says the Mishnah mitzvah begadol yibum kohanim. Let's get to the mitzvah of yibum. Who does yibum? You have a whole number of brothers. So the mitzvah is the oldest brother should do yibum l'chachila. That's when we say mitzvah. It's not Achiv, as it says in kohanim. The kohanim came first to do the yibum. He's zocha, it works, and he's married. But the first one that we go to is the gadol. Go right. We offer him and we say l'chachila he should do. Says the Gemara. Now this Gemara is going to be darshaning the pasuk. So just to familiarize with the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, you have on the side of Bechor asher teled, the Bechor that's Pashtu, the pasuk reading the pasuk that's born, meaning the child that's born through the yibum, Yakom al Shem Achiv. That child should stand up, will stand up, will continue the name of the brother that died. And his name will not be removed from Yisrael. So that's the way you read the pasuk of the pasuk. See the Gemara, Tanur Rabbanan, is not at all how we understand it. Bechor, the Bechor, mikan shemitzvah begadol yavim. The Bechor is not referring to the child that's born through the yibum. It's referring to the yavam, the brother-in-law who's doing the act of yibum. It's coming to describe that he's the Bechor. So what do we take out of that? Not literally the Bechor, but the eldest. The eldest of all the brothers is the one that's the pasuk saying he should go and do the yibum. It says that is born. So again, we're not going to understand that to be the child. Like we had in the first parak, it's coming to say that the woman, it's the yavama, not the child, the yavama that's falling has to be a shiur. She has to be a shaykh to have children. An islandess doesn't have no mitzvah yibum. Then Yakom al Shem Achiv. So again, it's not referring to the child; it's referring to the yavam. The yavam who decided to do yibum is going to stand up on his brother's name. So what is his brother's name? Nachalah. It means inheritance. He receives the Nachalah. He is Yorish, his brother. Maybe not. Maybe read the whole pasuk in Pshuto, like the first thing I was reading. The child who's born should take on the name of the deceased, the uncle, that the yibum was done for. Meaning Yosef, Karnasa Yosef, Yochanan, Karnasa Yochanan, Mamish, right? The naming. Gemara says no. Never kan Yakom al Shem Achiv and never al Shem Achiv hem Yikru Nachalah. Son, it says by Ephraim and Menashe, Yaakov tells Yosef, the brothers of Ephraim and Menashe, they're going to be added on to their brother's name. Gabi Nachalah, it says in the pasuk. Masham Hamar Lahalam, Mashem Hamar Lahalam Nachalah, Shem Hamar Kal Nachalah. So it's Shem ben Nachalah. So the Shem over here also is specifically Nachalah. It's not at all about the naming. And then we go back to the pasuk. The end of the pasuk, his name will not be removed from Yisrael. Prat l'suris sheshmoi machui. The suris, his name was already machui, can't have children, can't have a lineage after. So then he's excluded. Now, who's the suris in this case? So there's the Meiri. The Meiri says that it's referring to either side, whether it's the deceased or it's the brother who's doing yibum. Right, we'll see later in the 8th parak. There's a Mishnah that says that it's just no chalitza v'lo choltzin. It's true. It is true that there's no yibum or chalitza in either one. The question is if it's coming from this pasuk. So the Meiri is saying, yeah, that's drasha. However, based on the Gemara in the 8th parak, there is a different pasuk that if the brother who's coming to do yibum is a suris, that he doesn't, there's no mitzvah of yibum. So kepshuto, in that Gemara, this is referring to the brother who died. His name is already Machui, so therefore there's no yibum. Says the Gemara, we have a rule always, whenever we make drushes, but pasuk pshat in the pasuk still remains. You still have a pasuk pshat. But here the gzeir shava to the brothers of Ephraim and Menashe, that gzeir shava is completely okir the pashtus, and there's no din of naming the child of yibum with the same name as the uncle. Mara says, let's analyze this. We say you need a gzeir shava. If not for the gzeir shava, shem mamish, I would have understood that the child has to be named the same name as the uncle. Read the grammar of the pasuk. It's difficult to understand who the Torah is talking to in that reading. Yavam, if the Torah is saying to the yavam, Yakom al Shem Achiv ameis, he the child should be named the same name as his brother the mace. So Yakom al Shem Achicha mivarli. If it's talking to him, it should say your brother to him. Ila bedina. So it's talking to the bezdin. The bezdin should, like we have all over the Torah, they should enforce the rules. So Yakom. So then the bezdin says. We tell the Bezdin, Yakom al Shem Achiv, that he makes sure that he names the child al Shem his brother. So Yakom al Shem Achi Aviv mivarli. It should be focused on the child that's born, and say the child that's born should be named his uncle's name. Not that they're talking about the yavam. The yavam not being named over here. Mar says, no, V'dam Hachi Gamar Lo Rachman al Bezdin. Amru Leili Yavam, Yakom al Shem Achiv. No, that's not a taina. The Torah is telling the Bezdin, enforce it by telling the yavam that he should be Yakom. He, the child, should be Yakom al Shem Achiv, meaning he should name his child through yibum the same name as his brother. Ella, so it's a good taina. Therefore, there is a good reading of the pasuk kipshuto. Ella, so gzeir shava piktu legamri. So that's why, like we said before, you need the actual gzeir shava to be mutzi from the pasuk pshat. Okay, period. So that's the end of the working out the drushes. But hash the amra krava gadol ksiv ema bechor liyavim pashliam. So Gemara from now till the rest of the Amud, till the Mishnah on the top of Amud Beis, is going to deal with this problem. Right? It says in the pasuk of Haya Bechor. So we're saying, fine, the way you read that pasuk there is not kipshuto that it means the child, because we said the child is not getting named after the uncle because of the gzeir shava. So Haya Bechor refers to the yavam. We're talking to the yavam. We're saying we're describing the yavam. The yavam who's a bechor. Fine. So the rest of the Gemara is going to try to figure out why don't we keep the word bechor dafka in some way. So you start. Instead, we said the gadol, the oldest, whether he's a bechor or not. But he's the oldest. You go to him. He's the lecharchila. Why don't we try to keep bechor kipshuto in some way? So first way is the simple way. It's mamish a bechor. So hashdam karba galoksi, meaning you take it up from the pashtus of the child is born. Ema bechor liyavim pashul liyam bechlal. Who said maybe there's no mitzvah of yibum by a brother who's not a Bechor. That's the first thing. So tomorrow, no, right? Gemara says, very interesting. In the beginning of the parak, we have drashos that is nismai for yibum. What would be the purpose of that drasha? Yakom and what's the purpose of the drasha? If the Bechor is the only one that's doing yibum, a new brother is obviously not a Bechor. Fine, great. So Racha has a creative idea. Right? You could work out a case of a Bechor who's even younger. What does that mean? The Bechor from the mother. Right? Because we said that yibum is, if you have different brothers, as long as they share the same father, even they're only half brothers because they have different mothers, they're still yibum. That was the big first summit of the parak from Achva Mibnei Yaakov, and therefore you could have a Bechor that's born Bechor to the mother, and that's where the Torah is saying that Bechor should go. He could have done yibum. He could have done yibum through Avaya Bechor, but in the event that it's Eishdach V'Shalei Be'Lama, there's no yibum. That's his taina. So let's bring back the pasuk shad of Avaya Bechor. It's an actual Bechor. Says the Gemara, no. Who will what's this amrit? You can't suggest that the miyut of Eishes Achiv is for this example of Bechor De'ima, because the yibum ben Nachalah Tal Rachmana. We had a few times that it's based on this pasuk. Now we saw it today. This idea yibum ben Nachalah Tal Rachmana. It's very linked. Yakom al Shem Achiv. Right away we say the Bechor, the one who's doing yibum, is getting the Nachalah. So being that they're so linked that he's getting the Nachalah, is from the father and from the mother. So it will be very strange that we would say a Bechor of the mother is also a kiyum. Bechor of the father or the Bechor of the mother is a kiyum of yibum. He could do yibum. While a Bechor of the mother in general, by the mother's side, there's no Nachalah. All of a sudden, Torah here says Nachalah. It's like such a strange thing. So we rather say the easier way to understand the Haya Bechor is just the Godel, the oldest of the brothers, does yibum, and then he gets Nachalah. Says the Gemara, these guys is yibum, like a Bechor, these guys is yibum. So here's our second attempt to keep Bechor dafka. The second attempt is fine. So you're right. Bechor has to be lav dafka somewhat, but keep it dafka that it's in efsharis. That if there's a Bechor around him, the brothers, then you could have a mitzvah yibum, and like we said, even the younger brother could do yibum. Like we see, Eishdach Shabbalam needed to be excluded. But if there's no Bechor at all in the remaining brothers, maybe then there's no mitzvah yibum. Haya Bechor, it has to be shaykh to a Bechor. Says Amar Kro Meis Echad Mehem. So the Ma'aseh later the pasuk says one of the brothers dies. There's a mitzvah yibum. Mila skina demis Bechor v'Amar Achmano they haven't katan. So Meis Echad Mehem has a mashmos that in either direction, right? Whoever the one that's dying, there's a number of brothers. Even if the Bechor died and there's younger brothers, the younger brother does yibum. Or says maybe not. Who said maybe not? In light of the fact that we have Haya Bechor is in a specific case, specifically where the Katan was the one that died and the Bechor is remaining alive, and then there's Shaykh Yibum. Says the Gemara, Hamiat Rachmana Eishes Achiv Shloi Be'Lamai. But again, we'll go back to that same point to reject this attempt also, because we already were made the case of Eishes Achiv Shloi Be'Lamai, and that case definitely includes a case where a older brother died and now there's a younger brother, which if not for the miyut we would have said there is yibum, and then we say there's no yibum. So you see, Umeis Echaman even includes a case where the older brother died. And once we're there, so we're going to reject this whole attempt to say that Vahaya Bechor needs to be that there is a Bechor who is shaykh to yibum. Here's our third attempt. Ve'ema kileka Bechor kadam katan zacha v'ika Bechor kadam katan lo zacha. So let's say like this. If there's no Bechor, you're right. It's for sure shaykh yibum. That's when a younger brother is able to do yibum b'diavad if he did it and the yibum worked. But if there's a Bechor in the story, maybe the Torah say V'haya Bechor, then it is ma'akiv. Only he's the one that gets the mitzvah. And we can't use Eishdach Shabbalam anymore for this. That's just proving that it's shaykh yibum without a Bechor. Fine, here there's a Bechor, so it's ma'akiv. Amar Kra ki yishvach mi'achtov hukshu yeshivas achem zelazeh. So ultimately for this we say, well, there's a mashmos to the hekish that they're all equally shaykh to yibum at least b'di'evet. Right? We're not saying we know already lecharchila. We already said the Mishnah mitzvah b'gadol. So clearly there's a lecharchila for the oldest, but mitzad the yibum working, there's a hekish that they all are shaykh. It's all going to work. Here's our, was it number 5 already? 5th of the time. Ve'ema ki, or it's the 4th one. Ve'ema ki ika bechor lehadar agadol, ki leka bechor in chozrin etzel gadol. So the next attempt is like this, that if you have a bechor, so then there's this lecharchila to try to go to the oldest. And if none of the other brothers want to do it, what do? We go back to the oldest, specifically we force him to yibum chalitza, do something. If there's no bechor, maybe there shouldn't be a hakpoda to go to the oldest. So like this, we keep the lashon v'haya bechor somewhat dafka. V'haya bechor, right? Then you have this hakpoda to go to. Mar says, so maybe, yeah, is there any source that we don't say this? Maybe you're right. No, the problem is alamatani abai kashisha, mitzvah begadol yavim. It says the mitzvah is in the oldest to do yibum, like our Mishnah says. Then he writes, then he tells us, loy ratza, if the oldest didn't want to do yibum, holkin it's alachiv akatan. So we go to the Achiv. Now here's important, the indication, Achiv hakatan. You go to the next brother, the younger next brother, not Achiv katan, the youngest, Achiv hakatan. The next younger brother to him, lo ratza, chozin itzel gadol kibachor. He doesn't want, and the understanding that means they all don't want at that point. So then eventually you go back to the gadol, to the oldest, gadol, period. So Abai Kashisha says that there is, even in the event that you don't have the Bechor doing yibum, there's still this hakbara. If you that indication of Achiv Hakat, you're still trying to get to the oldest. Where would that come from? If according to this attempt, V'haya Bechor means the Bechor is supposed to do yibum. If he doesn't do it, fine. So then you'll go to the other brothers. There will be no indication, if you read the pasuk that way, that you should try to get the oldest brother. It only makes sense what Abayashi is saying, that you always try to go to the oldest, and if he doesn't want to do it, you go to the next oldest, and the next oldest, and the next oldest. Achiv Hakaton, if V'haya Bechor is understood, not literally the Bechor, but just the oldest. So I understand there's this idea of gadlus, the gadol is better. Says the Gemara, the answer to why we don't say Bechor is dafka, and rather we say gadol, we go after gadol, is kibachar. It's a mistavratos in understanding. The gadol is like a bechor. Ma bechor asa garmalai. I've gadol could do asa garmalai. So that's to reject that attempt. We're understanding mistavra that the Torah doesn't require the lecharchilo tafka on a bechor, but it's on the oldest. And the last attempt to keep bechor dafka is ve'ema ki miyabim bechor lishkol Nachalah. The whole din of al Yakom Hashem Achiv Ameis that he gets Nachalah, maybe that's reserved for V'haya Bechor, if he's a Bechor. If he's not a Bechor, all the other elements of this parsha would apply. There's yibum, there's kalitza, everything. But this one element of Nachalah, which is said right after V'haya Bechor, Yakom Hashem Achiv, right, that wouldn't apply. Says the Gemara, Amar Kra, Yakom Hashem Achiv, which is where we're coming from. It says Yakom Hashem Achiv Harekom. Yakom is inclusive of any brother that is Yakom. That's come. Fine. So now is the kasha. Ve'ela bechor dekayra chamona my halachas. There has to be something about the lashon bechor that the Gemara is not willing to accept. That it's just a way of expressing the oldest of the family. Say gadol. What's bechor? Says the Gemara l'greiu. So it's coming to take something away from them, from this person doing yibum. Whoever's doing the yibum, he's like a bechor. Ma bechor einu notel b'rekem hamoksok. Afai einu notel b'rekem hamoksok. Coming to make the one doing yibum similar to the bechor who doesn't take b'rekem hamoksok. So what does that mean? So the rule is if a bechor who takes Pishnayim, so we learn from a pasuk, he only takes Pishnayim when the father dies, and something which the father already has. But it's something which is right to go to the father. The father's owed something. It's not muksa by the father yet. So whenever the debt is collected, or whenever the money is collected and ends up by the tfisas abayis, the property, the estate. So there's no pishnayim. The bechor doesn't get pishnayim. So likewise, the rule v'haya bechor. When you read this pasuk, you're supposed to understand that the yavam who does yibum doesn't take roikim muksa. Now, what it means doesn't take roikim muksa, there's opposite pshatim in the Rishonim. So Rashi, if you look at the top Rashi, second Rashi on top, he says a very interesting idea, which right? Af yavam, the last line of Rashi, hanotel pishnayim b'nichsei aviv. Rashi says that a yavam, he does yibum, his father's still alive, his father then dies, so he actually takes pishnayim in the property of the father. He takes his own chiluk, like any of the children. He also takes the chiluk of the brother. Besides, when he does yibum, he gets the yerusha of the brother, whatever the brother already has. Also, he takes the father, the whatever would have went to the brother if he would be alive, if the father dies afterwards. That's what Rashi's opinion is. And then we're saying that yerusha which he gets from the father, the pishnayim, has to be what the father already has, but not b'roikim also. And the other Malach Rishonim, the Bahag says, they're trying to go with the Bahag that mamash lahepech, that there's no such thing as a yavam getting Nachalah from the father who dies after the yibum. Why? Because of this drasha. If not for the drasha, maybe. But this drasha Gufa says he does not take baroik ma'osa. He doesn't take that which was roi to go to the brother, the yavam who had died. The brother who had died. He doesn't take that. It was only right to go to the father, to that brother. And since the father died later, he doesn't get it. And so it's like based mamish two opposite mahalchim of what you're supposed to understand in the Vahaya Bechor. Okay, Be'ezer Shem will pick up with the Mishnah.